It is 5:03. We will call to order the Committee of the Whole Agenda meeting on March 28th for the City of Two Harbors. We'll start out with appearances. Jeff Anderson from the Costing Group, already lobbying support for the Waterfront development. Jeff here?
It's gonna be on Zoom.
Okay. Go ahead if you're ready, Jeff.
He's logged in, let's see.
Yeah, he was on camera.
He might have been. There he is. Oh, I got too much. Jeff Anderson? Are you ready for your?
I don't know if anyone can hear me, but we can't hear any of you.
Oh. All right, Ben.
Can you all hear us now?
Thank you.
Yep. First up on the Committee of the Whole agenda is an appearance from Jeff Anderson from the Costin Group about the lobby and support for the waterfront development. Go ahead, Jeff.
Mr. President and council members, can you hear me all right?
We can.
My colleague Gary Serkvenik is also going to be joining. He should be jumping onto the meeting here shortly. I appreciate the invitation to speak with you tonight. We appreciate the invitation to provide a proposal to the city for consideration. Just to give a little bit of background on myself and on Gary and our company, the Costin Group. We're contract lobbyists. We have worked in different capacities with and on behalf of the City of Two Harbors as the lobbyists for RAMS, the Range Association of Municipalities and Schools. We also served as lobbyists for the Northeast Minnesota Municipal Power Agency, of which Two Harbors was a member, or is a member. And so our background is we spend a lot of our time in St. Paul working with communities, working with school districts, entities mostly in northeastern Minnesota, looking for funding for projects. And that comes in a number of ways. We work on bonding projects at the legislature. We have a good relationship with the Department of Iron Range Resources. And we also work on a number of projects through the LCCMR process, which is the Legislative Citizens Commission on Minnesota Resources. And that has really, I think, prompted our discussion today, because the 2023 LCCMR process, RFP, has been issued, and proposals for that are going to be due come the end of May. And so if I may give you just a little bit of background specifically on LCCMR, that is money that is generated off the interest on the profits collected by the state of Minnesota from the Minnesota Lottery. And it is specifically designated to environmental type projects, whether that be studies having to do with the environment by the DNR, the university, or outdoor recreation projects like a campground or a waterfront or a trail system or trailhead. These funds are recommended by a commission made up of 17 members. There's 5 senators, 5 state representatives, 5 citizen members that are appointed by the governor, and then a citizen appointed by the House and a citizen appointed by the Senate. And once you apply for a project, you your project is considered and heard by that commission, and there's a process that takes many months that it goes through, and then it is recommended to the legislature for potential possible approval. And in looking at the council and the city's desire to possibly rejuvenate or redevelop the waterfront, we thought that this might be a perfect opportunity to seek those LCCMR funds to study and to create a proposal that would well position the city then to seek other funding in the future, whether that be additional LCCMR funding or state bonding funding or additional support from IRRB. And with that process starting at the end of May, that's why we're here speaking with you today. I'm just going to see if my colleague Gary has joined.
Yep.
He's on. Hi, Gary. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything there. I should back up by saying that this fund each year that the legislature looks at allocating through LCCMR is approximately $70 million. So there's a significant amount of money available for communities, and there are many communities in northeastern Minnesota and many projects that have been awarded those dollars over the years. One of the projects that Gary and I have successfully worked on over the years is the Misawa Trail, which is the longest paved bike trail in the country, going from the Mississippi River and all the way to the Boundary Waters in Ely. So there's examples in northeastern Minnesota of where those dollars have been used to physically construct, but also to help plan and develop. And so that's some of the information we wanted to bring forward to you today in an effort to have you consider perhaps having us work on your behalf to submit that application and to seek those funds and to look at that future waterfront development.
Are there any questions from the council? Go ahead, Derek.
When you say planning for the waterfront, are you taking into account the existing plans that have been prepared by the city in the past?
I'm sorry, I could not hear that.
The city has had a couple planning efforts 4 and 6 years ago. Are you talking about incorporating those into the plans that you submit for LCCMR? In addition to those plans, there was planning done for a transient harbor. Would that be part of your planning proposal?
Mr. President and council members, I think we would take the direction of the council as to where we would move in seeking those planning dollars and how they would be used.
Go ahead, Robin.
Thank you. Hey, Jeff, thank you so much for joining us this evening. As Derek said, there's been multiple plans that have been done since 1978 with regards to the waterfront. My question with these dollars that we could possibly get through this LCCMR, are those dollars that we can use towards a new vision for our waterfront? And the second part of my question, Jeff, is would you be able to assist us with other needs down at the Capitol as far as lobbying goes?
Okay. I don't know, the sound won't work on my computer.
Mr. President and
Oh, look at that. That's pretty good.
council members,
Could you please mute your mics?
yes, those dollars can be used to, if we submit a plan for an application for planning dollars, those dollars then would be used by the city to conduct a comprehensive planning process to put forward a vision as you, as the council and community see fit. It will better prepare us then and the city to seek out additional funding whether that be in a 2024 bonding bill or future LCCMR dollars. Those are typically awarded each year of the legislature. As for other services, yes, when we work on behalf of the community as your lobbyist, we will represent you in, at the Capitol or in other areas of government as directed.
Thank you, Jeff, I appreciate your coming and visiting with us.
Looks like Counselor Erickson has a question. Go ahead, Kathy, if you'd like.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple comments and observations in relation to how support, like having the Costin Group to support the City of Two Harbors, can provide us great connections with people not only at the Capitol, but resources throughout the state of Minnesota to help provide that support. We have important opportunities that sometimes can be, as Jennifer Sturbins knows, and I realized last week, sometimes things are quick to come up at the legislature and being called down to testify or to find opportunities, and having someone full-time down at the legislature and working those connections can be really critical to make sure that we don't miss opportunities. And then also the support and work that can happen outside of the legislative session, like the LCCMR and or Waterfront and or other issues or concerns. As Jeff has stated, in working with other communities our size. They work for several communities, along with as Jeff mentioned, the Range Area Municipalities, the RAMS organization, which working in coalition with them can be a very positive thing as well. So I appreciate that Gary and Jeff were able to be here tonight, and just wanted to bring forward my support of being able to provide even more leveraging opportunities for the City of Two Harbors, both inside and outside of the legislative session. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. President
Go ahead.
and council members, I would be, I'd be remiss if I didn't say too, and I should have started with this, that we're lucky in northeastern Minnesota, in particular in your district, to have strong leadership at the state legislature. Senator Bach has been an incredible asset for and leader for all of northeastern Minnesota, and Representative Murphy is a strong champion for Two Harbors. And so the work that Gary and I do is in conjunction with the work that they do. We try to help them as they fight for funding and fight for projects for a community like Two Harbors. In the world of LCCMR, that's an area that a lot of legislators, because it happens during the summer and fall, a lot of legislators don't necessarily operate in that world. And so we work with them to keep them updated on the process and what projects from their communities are in play, and get their support, and then they can advocate during the legislative session. I want to make sure to mention that we work in a close partnership with our legislators.
Go ahead, Counselor Bassett.
I have to admit, I am familiar with LCCMR. It was actually the grant that got the Spirit Hiking Trail started, and started with a few 30, 40 miles, and now it's 300 miles. Question regarding this: the city owns about 2 miles of waterfront, or it's within public ownership. Would the LCCMR plan, et cetera, be applicable to submissions to entities such as Great Lakes Restoration Initiative or Sailor Great Lakes? These are entities that are federal, not just state.
Mr. President and council members, my background comes in both municipal government and in federal government, having worked for a member of Congress for 6 years. And so I believe that I also pursue those federal avenues. And I know Two Harbors obviously is the recipient most recently of a federal investment for your wastewater project. And so I think there are other federal funding opportunities that we would research and seek to make a part of any sort of ongoing funding for a project once you've gotten to the point where you know what you want to do with that property to find the various sources of funding.
All right, any other questions from council?
Mr. Chair, is this something that we can put on this evening's agenda, or is this something that we?
Most likely have to go on the next meeting's agenda, is kind of winding up to that.
All right.
Go ahead, Derek.
Is this something that should go on the Waterfront Task Force agenda? There is a meeting scheduled, I believe, for April 14th.
It could definitely go to the Waterfront Task Force for review, yes. That's fine.
But then that would hold it up for our next meeting, wouldn't it?
Well, the 19th, did you say? Oh, yeah, we would have a meeting before that.
Yeah, we would have a meeting before that. Can it go to the waterfront committee as a whole?
We could have a waterfront committee that same night. I'm happy with planning it that way. And is that doable, Patty?
Same night of our regular council meeting, is that what you're
Yes.
asking?
Yep. And what date was that?
It would be the 11th.
Thank you.
Mr. President?
Go ahead, Councilor Erickson.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that this isn't exclusively about the waterfront, that's not the reason we're looking for a lobbyist and a support person, a government relations person to help us with all kinds of city things. So while I think it's important to get that perspective, this is a holistic position that would be helping us support in many ways, not just the waterfront. So I just want to be clear that the consideration here is as a government relations person to support the city of Two Harbors.
And Mr. President, council members too, I am finally seeing, and I know he's been on here for a while, but my colleague Gary Serkbenek is on, and I just want to introduce Gary. He's worked representing communities around northeastern Minnesota for the last 25 or 30 years, so he has extensive experience working on projects as well as representing cities as a lobbyist at the Capitol. So I would invite him to say a few words on behalf of our proposal and on behalf of our firm.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Jeff. First of all, I'd like to tell you, you've got a great community you should be really proud of. Every time I go through Two Harbors, it's a pretty dynamic place, and you've got a waterfront that's beautiful, and you should be really proud of the investments the community has made. And, I think I'd like to reemphasize what Jeff said. We've been blessed to have great legislators in northeastern Minnesota. Unfortunately, going forward, we're going to have a pretty big turnover as a result of retirements and redistricting. And I think all of us, especially as lobbyists, have to face the fact that instead of dealing with someone who's the majority leader or chair of the tax committee or chair of the bonding committee, we're going to have, a freshman senator representing you. Luckily you have other legislators in the House, but times change. And what I think we've been very effective doing over the last, in my case, 37 years is looking into the future, making relationships with not only senior legislators, but new legislators. People are going to be making decisions on your behalf 2 or 3 or 5 years from now as well. And so when you hire us, what we try to do is not just do one thing for you. We want to become a resource for the community that works on the administrative level with places like management and budget. After you get a potential grant, you have to work through the bureaucracy. And we're pretty good at that because we know folks on the inside who we've worked with for years, who trust our judgment, who will return our phone calls, who are listen to our advice. Not always do they do what we wish to do on your behalf, but we try to make an effective case. And I think that's what you're buying, is you're buying our hands. We we try to work with you. We don't come into a community and say, oh, you don't have to do X, Y, and Z. We want to find out what the community needs and then try to be creative. And I think that's one of our hallmarks as a firm, is that we bring creativity to the process. From, the city of Mount Airy, I'll just give you an example. What we did is, back over 20 years ago, we got an industrial grant to make an industrial park for renewable energy. And now the nation's second largest solar manufacturing plant is located in Mount Airy at that park. It took $400,000 in a bonding grant to build that industrial park, but there's been millions and millions of dollars invested in there from the private sector. And so what we want to be able to do is, become your eyes and ears and your hands when you're dealing with the state legislature, state government, and the federal government. To be frank, it's much more difficult working in the federal government. Earmarks are coming back. A few communities have received them in northeastern Minnesota. We expect that process to grow. We're good at that process. We both work in Congress, and we think we can be effective. But it's not going to be a great cookie jar initially. It's going to take a lot of work, and good projects will rise to the top. What we try to do on your behalf is look at the projects you have and help you define them so they fit within the guidelines of each program that we're trying to get. Help you articulate what they're like. You guys did a great job on your PowerPoint presentation on the land exchange, and it looked great. We do that type of stuff to help you along. So we're here to answer any more questions you have, but we're pretty excited about the opportunity to work with you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Survenick from the council? Having a hard time seeing Councilor Erickson has her hand up. I don't know.
She was not.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
just reiterating what Mr. Survenick said, then do we really, can we just move this to the agenda for our next meeting for discussion rather than having to go through committee?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Appearances, number 2 under appearances is City Attorney Costley.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the council. I don't have a lot to say tonight, but what I did present to you, you had asked me a few weeks ago to finish the analysis that was sent back to the council on the 3 issues from the Attorney General. I did do that over the weekend. You have received my memorandum of opinion on that on Sunday with the exhibits. You will also note that there's 2 additional items on that memorandum of opinion. So we had the ad hoc ethics committee meeting on March 17th, and at that meeting, 2 more items were presented to me, which are before this council for referral. One involves an email communication by a citizen, and the other one involves an allegation made in a local media publication. Both of those I have looked at, and I looked at them when I finished handling the 3 issues you'd asked me to address. I knew for a fact that the Attorney General was not going to address issues of city code, city charter, city communications policy, because they've already said that that's not something they're going to address. That goes to the city attorney. So I looked at the Minnesota statute that would apply to those issues. In my determination, because there is no contract with the city, sending those to the Minnesota Attorney General would result in the same decision that we received for the other 3. And that is, there is no contract. They're not going to render an opinion. My recommendation to the council tonight, you've got some action items that are numbers. New business items 3 and 4, it's accepting the recommendation of the ad hoc committee to request an opinion from the Minnesota Attorney General regarding a communication from Mark S. Johnson expressing concerns with potential conflict of interest involving solicitation of funds by Mayor Swanson for the 2 Harbors Performing Arts Center through garage starts. In my opinion, sending that to the Attorney General would not result in any information, based upon what we have received in response to the prior letter. Same is true with new business item number 4, accepting the recommendation of the ad hoc committee to request an opinion from the Minnesota Attorney General regarding the Duluth Monitor article dated March 17, 2022, regarding the alleged abuse of position by Mayor Swanson regarding loose fish and Brian Ensign. Same analysis for me. And I will point out, this is no reflection on the ad hoc ethics committee. They made a recommendation. Once I had a chance to sit down and think about it over the weekend, putting my report together, I don't think it's gonna do any good. I don't think we're gonna get anywhere with it. So my recommendation is not to send those 2 items to the Minnesota Attorney General. Having said that, I did take both of those items and include them in my memorandum of opinion that you all received last night and today with the attached exhibits. I offer that for your consideration. I did receive a request from Mayor Swanson to have some additional time to review that. I have no objection to that, considering the timing of how the report came out just last night. So you folks get to do with it as you may, but you have my opinion on the 5 issues that were presented to me for determination of whether there was violation of code, charter, or communications policy.
Mr. Attorney, then your recommendation would be to leave items 3 and 4 on the agenda, but your recommendation is to not send them, or should we look to strike those from the agenda this evening?
My recommendation is just to remove them from new business.
Is everybody comfortable with that? And a third appearance from City Clerk Nardine about the redistricting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, I was here at the last meeting talking about redistricting and the process that we used to arrive at a recommendation for setting new ward boundaries. When we sent it to the county, we were contacted by Lake County and said that something's wrong, our numbers aren't matching. So we went back and determined that when staff had pulled the numbers for the block census data, in other words, it's like a map that shows us how many people live on each census tract block. They pulled the block data for population over 18, assuming that you're only counting registered voters, when it should have been total population, because what we need to do is represent the population as a whole equally among our wards. This is one of the reasons why I suggested that we adopt it early in case there was any issues. I had previously sent it to the county, didn't hear anything back, but I'm thankful that they were able to report back to me that something was askew, and so we went back and revisited the issue. So as you recall, the practice for redistricting involves acquiring census block population data and using it to prepare recommended boundary changes. And then we solicited public involvement. We adopted a resolution establishing the new ward boundaries. And that when I sent that to the county, that's where the error was discovered. We had yet to publish or post the new ward maps. We still have to go through the voters' right to request and then notify the voters by mail. So, I'm showing you the previous ward map that was the original ward map before we just recently adopted the ward boundaries. Kind of hard to see, but, Ward 4 is substantially bigger, and what's probably more important is the next slide, whoops. The numbers that were shown on this slide, do represent an accurate accounting of the individuals in each ward. So 821, those numbers were correct. 821 in Ward 1, 855 in Ward 2, 964 in Ward 3, 993 in Ward 4. Those numbers were correct. It was just the census data that here's where we should be moving the lines, that they pulled the wrong data from the census website. So, what we had to do is go back to square one, take out the original map, pull the new census, data, and use the correct population map, the correct maps, to redraw the lines using the correct population versus the population of just the 18 and over. So this is the original changes that were made. So you can see in the yellow there what we added to Ward 3 or what we had adopted, and then Ward 1 and Ward 2 and so on. I'm sure that everybody came. So the next page on the counselor's maps is a map that shows the changes that we made. So I apologize for the folks at home, and I can't see the map, but I've got one here for anyone to look at afterwards. It just moves the boundaries around, and you can see in the yellowish up on the top in Ward 3, we're just moving those blocks instead of the ones that are along the railroad tracks into Ward 4, and we're moving the orange property that was currently, those blocks that were in Ward 3, we're moving those to Ward 2, and the pinkish purplish color will be moving from Ward 2 into Ward 1. So there will be some changes to the lines, but I think what happened is we ended up with a more clear map, an easier to understand map, just by happening to use the wrong data. I mean, and it's an unfortunate situation, but we still have time to make the correction. So to correct this, we had to start from the original map again. And what we need to do then is just adopt a resolution, reestablishing the district lines and rescinding the original resolution. Does anybody have any questions?
Not that I don't think it makes a difference, but do parks make a difference in area-wide? Because I've got every soccer and football, baseball field in the city.
No, it just happens to be that they end up in Ward 4. I think it's just because of where it lies, and those areas are put into specific blocks. Some of them are, you know what I mean, they're joined with blocks, with residential blocks that actually have populations in them. So that's how that works. And also the boundaries have to be compact and contiguous. So I couldn't throw a block, you know what I mean, a park just into a different ward that would be in the middle of your particular ward, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Comments, concerns? Thank you. I will be looking for support of the resolution, rescinding the original redistricting resolution and adopting the new one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Administrator updates.
Thank you, Council President. At the last meeting, I had mentioned that Julie Sansey was working on a polar vortex bill, Bill 3944. Last Thursday, there was a testimony by the NMUA and surrounding communities that were affected. And this Tuesday, tomorrow, Derek Passy will represent the city of Two Harbors for that same bill. And so it's good to see that keep moving along and people have supported that. One of the other things that I've been working on is the FAA implemented a bipartisan infrastructure bill by allocating over $25 billion to airports over a 5-year period.
I don't know if this is today.
A considerable amount of funding will be allocated to airports like ours. The allocation for our airport will be $159,000 per year over the next 5 years. I have a meeting with SEH on Wednesday to kind of start planning and bring something back to the council of uses for those dollars and what we can do with that. Looking at the agenda, I wanted to bring notice to item number 8, which is from our police chief, Rick Hoganson, regarding a purchase of a Polaris Ranger side-by-side. This is on our CIP. It was not for our CIP for 2022, but is requesting that that be moved up due to the events that we have going on this summer, where that will be a necessity for him being able to get what he needs done. And I just wanted to point that out in case anybody had any questions. We did talk about this at finance, I would say maybe in February or January of this year. Does anybody have any questions on the council regarding that?
Question, are there things in the public safety that will not be purchased to offset this cost, or is it increase in the budget for 2022?
We would ask for a budget amendment for 22. There is sufficient reserves in the capital equipment fund where we could get by with that purchase. So yeah, we would just request a budget amendment, sometime this summer.
Thank you.
And then the item number 13, which is accepting the recommendation of the Personnel Committee to hire Joel Dean for temporary position of city administrator interim on an interim basis, and authorizing the attorney to draft a working agreement with Mr. Dean regarding work schedule and compensation. I know that Brandon Fitzsimmons from Flaring Hood had sent out a proposed contract and some information, and I guess I just want to take this time to have that discussion. We did meet with the Personnel Committee on Friday with Robin Glacier, Ben Redden, myself, and Patty Nardine, with Joel. And for myself, I was very excited. He has experience with a city similar to our size and some things that we're working on. So I think that we gladly make that recommendation for hiring him on an interim basis.
Any questions from the council? Go ahead, Marcus.
Yeah, is that for 6 months? That hammer right now, or?
He does have some things going on in September, so that would be when it would end for sure. The contract doesn't state, end of September, but that's when it would be.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
thank you. Are we still going to continue looking for a long-term administrator as this happens?
Well, you can go ahead and answer if you want to, Mariah.
Yeah, I think that was one of the really good, exciting things about part of that interview was that, we had told Joel, or not Joel, that, we need to find a permanent one, and, you know, he was giving some ideas and had put some thought into that, and that would be one of his main job duties, is to, you know, work with the council on that process and help find that permanent replacement for city administrator.
I have one more question. Were there other applicants?
There was not. I mean, we had, you know, I think at the March 14th meeting, we had discussed, you know, that we had that League of Minnesota Cities listing. We had, you know, weeded out 4 people that were within proximity with cities our sizes. Of those 4 people, they were contacted, and there was only 1 remaining, and so that's who we interviewed.
One more follow-up question. So the purpose of the interim administrator would also be part of his duties, and he'll only be here 4 days a week, is that what I'm understanding? Would also be to continue the process of getting a permanent city administrator?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Ms. Kathy, other hand, please.
No, she does not.
Okay. Move on to any more attorney updates, Mr. Attorney?
Do not.
City clerk and HR updates?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, wanted to talk about consent agenda item number 17, at least it was when I was preparing my notes. Which is the application of Castle Danger Brewing for brewer off-sale malt liquor license pending passage of the omnibus liquor bill. So what that is Castle Danger has been on a campaign to free the growler, which has now been somewhat successful. It seems it's been reported that there's a possibility that the bill could be passed, and that would result in the ability to sell growlers once again. So they're making application for their off-sale malt liquor license, so that in the event I'll continue with that. Current language states that if approved, the bill would become immediately effective. So they're being proactive in requesting that their application be approved pending the passage of that bill. And I just wanted to state for the public that we receive concerns expressed by the members of the public regarding capacity of this room earlier today. So we reached out to the building official who recommended a capacity for this room based on the square footage. So we posted the capacity at 63, and we are now at 63 for capacity for this meeting. If anybody has any questions on that.
I have a question.
You need to approach the mic.
How do I do that?
Well, actually, I'm asking the council for questions.
I don't have any questions. I talked to Jim Gilbert earlier as well, and he was in here mapping out and tape measuring everything and getting the full assessment of the grounds for this.
Is there an alternate site location that additional people can go to and view?
They could go home and look on Zoom.
Okay.
I think that's all the city's really obligated to.
I will say, I do see in our other meeting at 6 o'clock that one of our appearances is actually standing in the doorway, and so.
Perhaps someone would be willing to step out.
I feel that, yeah, just to maintain, good transparency with everybody, I'd like to make sure that everybody who's on the agenda for tonight to speak gets a chance to.
my report offense.
Go ahead.
So I'd also like to discuss new business item number 7. We've had several data practices requests lately, and as a part of that process, I've had some counselors explain to me they're having trouble accessing emails beyond a certain date. So in speaking with our IT person, he has verified his ability to access counselor email data. We're wondering if counselors would prefer that we ask him to gather the city email data or the council, or if they want to do that on their own. I don't want to inadvertently go into counselors' email accounts without their permission.
I want them to do it personally. I don't want to go shuffle through
I
years of
personally,
emails.
in just looking for certain data request emails, can't go back beyond a certain time. I think it's when we got our new tablets. And so I would prefer if the IT specialist just,
So that's what the purpose of number 7 is on the agenda. So I just wanted formal action on that, just so
gotcha.
I'm perfectly clear with what the council.
Sure.
Next, item number 10 under the consent agenda was the Bald Eagle Water Ski Show. It's organized by First Day Events, and they're requesting assistance from the city, I'm assuming in-kind services for trash, restrooms, parking, and pedestrian traffic control. And with the understanding of the conflict of interest issues that have already been presented with regards to First Day Events, I just want the council to make a determination on that. That's not an event permit that I'm willing to sign off on without direction from the council. I'd also request that we add to the agenda, or actually, I'm gonna change that. I'd like to change the wording for consent agenda item number 13 to that the interim employment agreement between the City of Two Harbors and Joel Dine be approved and executed by the mayor and city clerk, subject to contingent on and effective on the date of completion of a satisfactory background check, and that the council president be designated as the city council designator or designee under the agreement. So in other words, basically, that person has an issue or a concern, he needs to, he would be at the direction of the council president. Like if he was sick or couldn't report to work or those types of things. Anybody have any questions on that?
Just, it's under section 3, that's where he'd be identified. We've just identified Ben, the council president.
And then proposed agreement.
Go ahead, Gary.
So this is we're hiring Mr. Dean,
Yes,
and it includes compensation.
yes.
It's my understanding that only the mayor is allowed to sign contracts involving compensation per city charter.
I believe.
What?
So what exactly are you saying, Councilor Passy?
Well, if it's an agreement which includes compensation, that should be signed by the mayor, or council president if he is acting in the capacity of mayor.
Well, I can tell you that all of the city's negotiated labor contracts are signed by other than, and I'm not saying that it's correct or not correct, I'm saying that that is the past practice. And I don't care if I sign it or not, we can certainly take my name off it if that's something that the city attorney would think would be appropriate.
Form over function, let the mayor sign it. Get it done.
Thank you.
So are you saying you would like an edit of something that's on the agenda this evening, Gary?
I guess I did not see where the agreement for Mr. Dean was being signed under item number 13.
I just requested a change on the wording of the language. For that item.
And in that, it does say,
executed by the mayor and city clerk. I can remove the city clerk. If that would be appropriate with the rest of the council.
Mr. Chair, I'm confused. I am totally confused here because I was understanding that there wasn't a question about who was going to sign the contract, but Patty made reference in her note. If you could just reread it, Patty, because I think you made reference to who he would directly report to.
Right.
And would you just reread that part, because I think that's where the confusion is coming in. It's not who's signing the contract, it's who the interim city administrator is going to report to the council president if he needs to not be at work. Was that what you said?
I can read that back, and I'm happy to do that, but I think what Mr. Passy is having an issue with is me personally signing anything that has to do with compensation.
No. I beg to differ. It is the mayor who is supposed to sign anything having to do with compensation, and that was my initial question, and that's all I objected to.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you.
personally, I'm sorry, I mean the city clerk. He's objecting to the city clerk, correct? It should just be the mayor, not the mayor and the city clerk.
No, the mayor's signature should be attested to, correct.
So
So what's the issue?
So what was the issue, Derek, that you were asking?
I was led to believe that this was for compensation. If it does not include compensation that is being signed, the council president can sign that.
I won't be signing, well, the council president won't be signing that.
Unless the mayor's absent.
Correct, unless the mayor's absent. I would just be the designee, or the council president would be the
I'll read it again.
Please.
The interim employment agreement between the City of Two Harbors and Joel Dean be approved and executed by the mayor and city clerk, subject to, contingent on, and effective on the date of completion of a satisfactory background check. City Council President Ben Redden be designated as the City Council designee under the agreement.
I do not have issue with that.
Okay, that I think is all the items I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance director updates.
Thank you, Council President. We don't have a lot of time left, but our department has been extremely busy trying to get ready for the audit. I appreciate all the ladies out front who have helped me gather all of that information. We've got about 3 weeks left, and we still got a lot of work to do, and we're still working on our software update, and that's moving along pretty smoothly. So thank you to everybody that's been helping with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Community development planner updates, Jen?
Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd rather wait till the 6 o'clock meeting because I have a little bit of stuff here and we have a public hearing that has to start at 6. Okay? Thank you.
City engineer updates, quick, Joe?
I have nothing this evening, sir.
All right, thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Mr. President, item number 14 on the consent agenda, as far as prohibiting social media accounts, that is an interesting sentence. I'm just curious is where we're completely prohibit, like as far as a Facebook page or everything. We are not allowed, once we're elected, to communicate at all. I would like to know what prohibit exactly, and I know we don't have a lot of time, but here it is. I would like to know what that is meaning.
Mr. President, I can attest to that. If we want, I think the best thing to do for that one would be move it to new business, just so we can further discuss maybe that's just from my point of view, and I was the one that brought that up. A Facebook engagement, just in my experience in the past, has never produced anything.
In a counselor capacity.
In a counselor capacity, I don't feel like it's the place for like arguing on Facebook. And I've always encouraged people to come down here and talk to us. So that's my personal opinion, coming out of the ad hocs, me and Ben's, and But I'm definitely willing to talk about it further if you wanna move it to new business.
I would like that, please, thank you.
That's,
Number
item
14.
14. All right, we'll put that at new business. Where am I? New business number 11. That works. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Bassett.
Can we look at items number 5 and 6, which indicate the mayor's and the city clerk to execute and deliver, and change that to the mayor and city administrator for city charter?
Excuse me, could you move your microphones a little bit closer so we can hear a little bit better back here? Thank you.
Sure. What numbers were those? Sorry, Gary.
So, Mr. Chair, so, what specifically is not following the city code or charter, may I ask?
City charter indicates that the mayor's signature shall be attested to by the city administrator.
I don't have a copy.
If everybody's fine with that, we will just move it that way for the evening.
Are we moving,
Is that-
we're moving it to new business?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be 5 and 6.
12 and 13.
All right, nothing else, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.